Hey everybody, welcome to Big Balls Fantasy Football, the only show with powerful picks, sexy super fans, and that's really fun. I'm your host, 27-year fantasy veteran, Greg Reifsteck.
And I'm your co-host, Jenilee, and we're both very big Bears fans, and together we are the beauty
and the beast
of fantasy football experts.
So we're in week 6, and we got our second Bears victory. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? No Alshon Jeffrey in the lineup. You know, no Brandon Marshall. He's way gone on another team.
No Eddie Royal.
No Eddie Royal. And we still managed to put together a victory because Jay Cutler did not throw a pick.
That's right. He didn't throw a pick at the end of the game to lose us the game. That's always good. He did fumble, and Kansas City scored a touchdown on his fumble.
Yep. Put us in a hole. Put us in a nice hole.
Exactly. I believe that was the second play of the game that happened. Yeah. So at the very least, at least it happened in the beginning of the game, where he had enough time to make up for it, which he did. So still not a Cutler fan over here, but I do have to give him this one and say that he is the guy that made it happen. He didn't have an offensive line. Our offensive line is banged up. Receivers banged up, and he pulled this one out. So congrats, Cutler. I'm giving you this one.
Yeah, you don't see a Jay Cutler jersey. I mean, you see a Matt Forte jersey because he went over 12,000 yards this week. Congratulations, Matt. Thank you very much. And also this week, #1 running back in the league for yards. Way to go, Matt. And also, we have one more thing to be happy about, our MVP.
Absolutely. Our kicker, Robbie Gould, he is the all-time leading scorer for the Chicago Bears. He kicked a couple field goals in this one, and that put him over the top. So congratulations, Robbie. It's awesome. As you always say, he's our MVP of the Bears.
I sit there in the bar, and every time he comes up, I yell, MVP, MVP. If it wasn't for him, there are many games we would not have won, and sorry, Kevin Butthead Butler. She has no idea who you are, but I do. You were the kicker on our Super Bowl Chicago Bears back in the day, and sorry, but Robbie Gould overtook you. So let's talk a little bit of fantasy stats from the game. Of course, we won the game 18-17, and Cutler, 252, 2 touchdowns, no picks, but again, we talked about that fumble, which, Kansas City recovered for a touchdown. Forte, 74 yards, 38 yards receiving, and a receiving touchdown at the end of the game, of course, that sealed it for us. And a lot of people are picking him up off the waiver wire. Wilson, 1 touchdown, 85 yards, kicking ass in there. And what have you heard? Eddie Royal should be back, but Alshon still, I think in the press conference, I think it's doubtful that he's going to be in this week. Yeah,
I think the thing with Alshon's hamstring is he started to practice at least last week. They thought he might be able to go for Kansas City, but the thought is that he had a setback in last week's practice, which of course is why he was out for Kansas City. And again, they're going to try to give the practices a go this week and see how it turns out. But I'm not super confident in Alshon being back. I'm a lot more confident in Eddie Royal being back. So that'll always help because Wilson was really the only guy out there besides Martavis Bryant and Forte that Cutler is used to working with. The other receivers he's not used to throwing to. So
I mean, our Bears defense held up, and I have my condolences to Jenilee over here. She lost a big player off of one of her teams, and all you did out there, unfortunately, all of you took Jamal Charles early, and he got, as I called it, I'm sorry to be cruel, his annual or every few years major leg injury, and he's out for the season, isn't he?
Yeah, usually it's not something this serious where he's out for the entire season. But yeah, Jamal Charles tore his ACL, so he is out for the year. So, this is just a situation. Injuries happen in football. They happen every year on your fantasy team. I've never gone through a fantasy season and not had any injuries. So you just got to go out there and get West is the guy. I'm hearing that you need to get Niles Davis should also be possibly a decent pickup, but I think that Andy Reid is going to ride with West first. So.
That is the word. The word is West. Niall Davis didn't come in right away or anything, and he's definitely going with him. This week, bye weeks, everybody. Week 6 bye weeks, Cowboys, Raiders, Rams, and Bucks. So don't forget, well, the Cowboys, nobody doing. Okay, like I said, maybe you're not missing too many key players this week. It's only going to get rougher next week. There's a lot of bad bye weeks up in week 7. So we wanted to talk about this week strategies that we used this week to win. Do you want to start with yours?
Sure. This week was an interesting week for me because in a couple of my leagues, I'm in 3 leagues. I had a lot of injuries, and then I've had a lot of people on buys in these first couple weeks. So that's been a little bit difficult for me to handle. But, I went out there. I picked up Alan Hurns in one of my leagues. He was just sitting out there on the waiver wire. I had him already in a different league on my bench, but I, was able to insert him in both leagues. That helped me out. Brandon Cooks was actually out there again in one of my leagues. He had been dropped because he wasn't producing so much. I went out there and got him. He actually scored a touchdown, had a good game. So, strategy-wise, sometimes you just have to look at who you have, and if they don't have the best matchup, you have to say, okay, I have to go with this guy this week. And then if there are players that you can drop that don't have good matchups, go look and see who's out there on the waiver wire and try to find a good matchup. Really study those matchups because if you only need a player for 1 week, you just need them to score points 1 week. I picked up Larry Donnell, the Giants tight end, this week because of the matchup, and he scored a touchdown for me. I don't need him any other week, so I'm dropping him. The same thing, I've had to float quarterbacks the last couple weeks in one of my leagues because I have Big Ben. So I've literally been in that league basically picking up a new quarterback every week, depending on the matchups. So sometimes you have to float players on a weekly basis and try to find someone that can do enough and know that the people that are solid on your squad are the ones that you're leaning on. You're leaning on those 4 or 5 players that you have that are really solid.
Definitely a good strategy. Yeah, I totally agree with the whole floating thing. I'm in the same trouble in one of my 3 leagues, and I lost this week in them. It's Prost, who is, of course, one of our columnists and has a blog on our social media, which we'll get to in a moment. But in his league, man, I had a lot of bye weeks just like she did, and I had to pick up a lot of matchups, so I'm definitely on board with that strategy. And, that's what you do. You play them 1 week, and then you forget about them. So my strategy was from the beginning of the season, and a lot of you did this, you take players like your Le'Veon Bells, you take your Antonio Gateses, you take your Martavis Bryants, and you wait. And you just sit there and wait, you wait, and you pray. And thank you very much, Antonio Gates, on Monday Night Football for balling out for me, losing your fucking mind. I was so happy, and I was behind by 30, and because of Le'Veon Bell and him, I was able to combine and win my game by about 12 points, and I was very happy about that. So you got to use patience in fantasy football with players that, especially, I told you last week, you got to play him. And then it was really weird that Martavis Bryant was a total no-show and got injured practicing, which was super weird. So, he wasn't even a pick last week, so I didn't even really call that one. That was just a luck thing. But seriously, having patience like that. And then I had to do the weirdest thing. I had Charles Clay at tight end, and I actually put Gates into my flex. When you have 2 players that are producing that well, I know you're sitting there scratching your head going, I have 2 tight ends in my lineup. When you have 2 tight ends that are, one that you know is going to produce that week because of the matchup, and the other one is balling out in the league. He actually didn't give me a lot of points, but the strategy worked because Gates made up for those points. So that's how I was able to win. So patience, and don't be afraid to play a weird lineup. Of course, you only play 3 kickers, but
Well, and that's what's great about the flex position too, is that you can go out there again. When I say I'm looking on the waiver wire, a lot of times I'm looking on the waiver wire for that flex position.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm dealing with injuries and buys and I know I can drop someone that hasn't really been producing, I'm going on and I'm able to look at maybe wide receivers and running backs, maybe and tight ends, and say, okay, I have 3 positions. I only need 1 player from these 3 positions to pick up for this week to produce. And, you know, I go ahead and try to pick up the person that I think will produce the best based on the matchup. So sometimes that, you know, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, speaking of which, I'm going to give you a tight end this week in the Beasting Out picks. That is somebody that if you don't have in your lineup, he's sitting out there on the waiver wire, you got to put him in. Stay tuned for that. Let's get into the biggest balls of them all league, and let's get into the standings, damn it. I mean, cash. Jeez, really? I tied J game. I tied him. And he's still going 4-0-1.
He's technically undefeated.
Yes, technically undefeated. That's a very good way of putting it. 4-0-1. Way to go, Cash. Shout out to you. Cash, the Cash Millionaires team over there with Smash, of course, 4-1-0 in second. Winning is my forte right over here.
There we go, in third. 4-1 now.
Just by points.
Just by points. 4-1.
Just by points. You're behind by about 70 points. Yeah, you can make it up. You can make it up in a few good weeks. There's me right behind her, beasting out with 2-2-1 in 4th place. And then it gets really scary. Down there in 5th, Jason with the Jacksonville Camaros. 2-3-0, ex-presidents at 6th. Nanny Cam Newton, new to the league, 2-3-0 at 7th. We have a log jam there. We have 4 teams at 2-3-0. Bringing up the rear is last year's champion, Shell. What's up, Shell? We're going to talk to him in our fan segment. His team's kind of gone awry this season, and he'll tell you why. Then we have Prost down there at 1-4-0. 4 losses in a row.
Oh, pros.
Jeez, come on.
What's going on?
Come on. You didn't have to draft all Packers. I'm just kidding. And then our perennial, sorry, Jason, yet again, LA Rams in 2015. Maybe that's why he's losing, because they named it that. 1-4-0 in the basement down there with 589 points. So that's just an update.
It's crazy. I always feel like Jason does not draft that bad.
No, he drafts quite well.
I think maybe he just has bad luck. I don't know if it's injury bad luck
it's
or
always injuries.
It's the one season that person that always produces doesn't produce. But poor Jason.
It's always injuries. It was injuries last year and it was injuries this year. And he just like throws his hands up. We go over to he's like, why?
And I have to say, I'm doing pretty good in my other leagues, too. I'm 4-1 in another league, and then I'm also 3-2. I lost the first 2 weeks in my all-ladies league, but I came back and won 3 in a row. So I'm up there in all of them.
I am only in the near the basement in Prost, but there's actually a 5-team log jam for, like, the last 2 places, just like in ours, so... Keep playing if you're near the basement. Keep playing. Just keep plugging in, because a lot of those people that are winning now, they will run into bye week trouble. They will run into injury trouble. Don't feel defeated. Stick it out, because as long as you make it into the playoffs.
You just have to make it into the playoffs.
Just make it into the playoffs. That's all you ever have to do. But I think in our work league, I think you need to give a shout out to Mr. Courtney. He's in last place.
Oh, is he? Oh, sorry. I don't know everyone in that league.
But
I know, a lot
Courtney,
of people, but I do know Courtney.
And
so.
Mr. Perennial, I'm going to go in first place to the playoffs and lose. I don't know what his strategy is this year. He's sitting in the basement, and actually Tyler, who's usually in the basement, he's been watching the show. He's been telling me, is now sitting up in 3rd place. And he finally got a team together. So in all leagues, everything switches around.
And the defending champ is doing pretty good in that one.
Yeah. I think she is. All right, let's get on with the show. And I'm going first this week, right?
You are going first. Let's just tell them about our app really fast.
Yes.
We have an app that you have to absolutely download. It is free. It has everything, lineup, question, and answers. our show. You can watch our show straight from there. Player updates. We give you all the injury updates.
We have blogs. We have Cash, and we have Prost giving you weekly blogs, strategy blogs, telling you exactly what to do. And we have like the biggest busts over there on Prost's, and Cash, I'm sure, is going to give us a report from being there at Arrowhead Stadium and getting to actually see the win live. I know he was totally thrilled, so I'm going to tell him to give us a little bit of a on-the-ground report from there when he comes back. And we're hooked up to our social media. Look us up on Facebook. Type in Big Balls Fantasy Football. We're the only ones on there. You can tweet us at Big Balls FBall.
Absolutely, and you can find us on Instagram, of course. Same thing, search Big Balls Fantasy Football. Yep. We are posting a lot more photos from our Sunday Fun Days.
And we have a Sunday Fun Day segment this week, so we hung out with the Broncos fans. We did a tin horn thing, and we got Shell on there, so a lot of fun coming up this season. Keep watching on the app. So should we get into my beasting out segment?
Let's get into it.
Let's do it. Hey everybody, welcome back to Big Balls Fantasy Football. It's Greg the Beast here with your Beasting Out segment. I'm going to give you 2 Go Hards and 2 Go Softs, 2 players that are going to do good in your lineup this week, 2 players that might not produce as well for you this week. I want to give a really quick shout out to somebody that we lost from our fan family. Lonnie Robinson, unfortunately, left us this week. And I just want to give a shout out to Sherry. We're thinking of him. He used to be really good to our show, so Godspeed to him. And I want to thank him for all his support. And he was a huge Steelers fan. And as Phil said, who was at the Monday Night Football game, Lonnie pushed Le'Veon Bell across the finish line. Anyway, let's get on to more positive things. Let's get on to Eddie Lacy. Well, he's not a completely positive thing because he has not been producing for you fantasy-wise. Everybody that took him early, he's kind of been a fantasy bust. That's because he's been up against, tough run defenses. It's really easy to take somebody in the early rounds, but then all of a sudden you realize, oh crap, these are really good run defenses, and he's not going to produce. Well, I got a gift for you this week. He is up against the Chargers, damn it, and they give up the second most points to running backs. He is going to be just like Le'Veon Bell. My prediction for you is the way Le'Veon Bell ran like Swiss cheese through the Chargers defense on Monday Night Football. He is going to go off this week. The defenses he's been putting up with are Seattle, Kansas City, San Francisco, St. Louis. It's not simple. So put him in your lineup this week, as you have been, most of you. I don't think anybody's dumped him, but I'm just telling you, finally, you're going to get some production out of Lacy. Let's go on to my second Go Hard pick. It's tight end Gary Barnidge. Who's Gary Barnidge, you might say? Nobody drafted him, but he has been going off for the Browns at the tight end position. Week 3 versus Oakland. 6 receptions, 105 yards, 10 targets. That is what Jenilee is always talking about. The targets is the most important thing. Week 4 versus San Diego. 6 receptions, 75 yards, 6 targets. And then the creme de la creme in Week 5 against Oakland. 8 receptions, 139 yards, 10 targets again. He is up against a really tough tight end defense this week. But I have a prediction. I like to play the trends, and this guy is just hot. And Prost, I'm sorry, you cannot call one-hit blunder on this guy. He is showing that he can bring results. He has become McCown's big target there on the Browns, and it is a tough matchup. He's playing Denver, but he is also the guy that he checks down to. So he's going to keep checking down and checking down and checking down and getting you those PPR points. He's getting you those target points. He's getting you those yardage points. Make sure you pick him up off the waiver wire like I did in one of my leagues. And I hope my waiver pick gets him because I am going to ball out with him this week. So let's get to the Go Softs. I know you're all going to be shocked by this one because Allen and Allen over there in Jaguar land have been losing their mind over there at the wide receiver position in Jacksonville. But just a really, really, crappy matchup this week. I mean, I know what you're thinking. Weeks 2 and 4, there's the targets. Targeted 12 times. It's making you drool. It's making you drool. I got to play him. Week 5 versus Tampa Bay, 2 touchdowns. But it's the Texans D this week, who are very good defending against the pass. And they give up the 7th fewest points to wide receivers. It's just a really crappy matchup. I don't like it. And I know you're thinking, well, he's one of the Allens. Let me put him in. Actually, I was going to give you a twofer and say don't play Allen Burns either, but I picked him. Don't put him in your lineup this week. If you have a better choice coming off the waiver wire or you have somebody on your bench with a better matchup, I'd put him in. So speaking of the Texans defense, as a whole, fantasy-wise, the Texans defense has sucked. I have them in 2 of my leagues. I'm not happy about it. The points have just not been coming. 12 total fantasy points the entire 5 weeks they have been going. That's horrible. You want some sort of production. And, I mean, they are an elite defense, but just fantasy-wise, they have not been doing it for you. No fumble recoveries, no touchdowns, only 6 sacks and 2 interceptions. They're not making turnovers for you. They're not getting pick sixes. They're not doing anything for you fantasy-wise. I'm not saying to get rid of them. I think they're finally going to have some people coming up later on. But just against good offenses and bad offenses, some really bad offenses, they have not been producing well. So I would sit there and put them in the backup position, and I'd pick up somebody else. Look on the waiver wire. There's got to be somebody out there that's going to get you more than this every week. So I wouldn't get rid of the Texans defense. That's why I'm saying go soft. I would say stick them on the bench, give them a few weeks, let them lick their wounds, and then get you some points in the next few weeks. So that is my Beasting Out segment. Thanks for watching, and let's go on to Jenilee's Real Men Picks. Stay tuned.
I need a real man. Have you seen him?
Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to my Real Men segment for week 6. My name is Jenilee. As you can see, we have some new photos that we're using, so this is one of my fun new ones. And also, I'm wearing the breast cancer awareness t-shirt. Of course, we are in the month of October, so just want to send a quick thought to everyone dealing with breast cancer, everyone who has dealt with breast cancer or who has lost someone to breast cancer. I know I just lost a coworker not that long ago. So Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but as we are in week 6, let's move it on to my picks. First, I have my Go Hard picks. So my first Go Hard pick this week is wide receiver A.J. Green of the Bangles. Hey people, A.J. Green is back. I know you suffered through last season. I suffered through last season. I had him in one of my leagues, but he is fully back this year. And let's just say the last 3 weeks, looking at what he's done, he's had 23 catches for 387 yards. He had that huge 200 and whatever yard game and 2 touchdowns. So that's just what he's done in the last 3 weeks. And he has a really good matchup this week. Dalton is on fire. He plays Buffalo this week, and Dalton has thrown for 1,518 yards, 11 touchdowns, and only 2 interceptions in these first 5 weeks. So, of course, it helps your wide receiver when the quarterback he's playing with is on fire. Dalton is just playing with a completely different confidence this year. And also, A.J. Green is catching 72% of what is thrown to him. So we always talk about targets on this show. Targets are fantastic. But the person needs to be catching those balls that are being thrown to them. So he's catching 72%. That's a really good percentage. And Buffalo has given up 7 touchdowns to wide receivers. And the Bengals have the 5th best passing offense. So the Bengals are having a lot of success passing the ball. Buffalo is not stopping the pass at all. That's why I think this is a great matchup for A.J. Green. I think this is going to be another week that he'll go for over 100 yards, and I'm predicting he scores 2 touchdowns for you guys this week. On a side note, too, you might want to look at Marvin Jones and Mohamed Sanu as well, because, again, this Buffalo pass defense is not very good. So I know A.J. Green is a no-brainer, but I'm going to throw those other names out there for you as well to keep in mind. If they're out there on the waiver wire, they might have a good week, too. It should be a good week for all Cincinnati Bengal receivers. Let's move it on to my next Go Hard. My next Go Hard is quarterback Drew Brees of the Saints. He's playing on Thursday Night Football against the Falcons. Oh, Drew Brees, I feel for you this year. I know it is rough in Saints land this year. It is not easy. But hey, the last 2 weeks he's thrown for over 300 yards in each game. He's still passing, even though we don't know half of the receivers he's passing to this year. And he's had 4 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns in each week of the last 2 weeks. So he's still getting some production, even though it's been a little bit rough. He is still Drew Brees. They are still the Saints. They are going to throw the ball. And as I mentioned, they play the Falcons. 4 of the last 6 games that he's played them, he has thrown for over 300 yards. So he does have passing success against the Falcons, even though their defense is playing pretty well this year. Falcons defense is playing better than they have been because Dan Quinn is over there now as head coach. But Drew Brees historically has success passing against them. He does throw interceptions, so he probably will throw at least 1 interception against them. But again, he's going to make up for it with the yards and the touchdowns. He needs to bounce back. This is a game, it's national TV, and he needs to have a good game because he had 3 turnovers in week 5. It was horrible. 2 fumbles and an interception. He needs to have one of those weeks that he just goes and gets back on track. And also, this game could be a shootout. It's a home game for Brees and the Saints. As we know, the Falcons are able to score, and the Saints' defense is not that good. So this could be a game that ends up being high-scoring and a shootout. He's going to have to pass some touchdowns and pass for a lot of yards. He should get you some points this week. Let's move it on to my Go Softs. My first Go Soft is wide receiver Keenan Allen of the Chargers. And I know you guys are thinking, why is he a Go Soft? Because, you know, he's having a pretty solid year. And I hear you on that. He really is. But I don't like his matchup this week. He plays against Green Bay, and Green Bay's defense is kind of came out of nowhere. They're a lot better than I predicted them to be this year. And they've only given up 3 touchdowns to wide receivers in 5 weeks. So they are holding those wide receivers out there and not letting them get in the end zone. And let's face it, in fantasy, you want every one of your players to get a touchdown. Also, they have the 2nd most sacks. They have 20 sacks. And if you watch San Diego, their offensive line is bad, which means Phillip Rivers is going to be in trouble back there. He's going to have to pass quickly. He's probably not going to be super accurate. It's a game that's in Green Bay as well. So this is just not a good situation when that pressure comes to Rivers. It's going to be hard for him to get the ball to Keenan Allen. I assume Sam Shields will be the one running around with Keenan Allen all day. And he already has 2 interceptions on the season. So again, this is just a tough matchup for Keenan Allen. I just don't see him getting a lot of points this week. Let me move it on to my second Go Soft. My second Go Soft for this week is running back Carlos Hyde of the Niners. And again, I know he's produced some weeks for you, but he hasn't produced every week for you. And here's why. Against Pittsburgh, Arizona, and Green Bay, he had 0 touchdowns, and he had less than 60 yards per game in those games. Those are all good defenses against the run. He is not producing against good defenses against the run. He's producing against defenses that aren't that great at stopping the run. So this week is another tough one. He goes against Baltimore, and Le'Veon Bell is the only running back to rush for more than 65 yards against Baltimore. We know Le'Veon Bell is just a beast. So he's the only one that's been able to do it. The Ravens have been stopping everyone else. In weeks 2, 3, and 4, he didn't get in the end zone at all. Again, you're wanting touchdowns from these players. I just don't see him getting in the end zone again this week. I think he's going to have another tough week with that. And he's not targeted much in the passing game as well. If you're in a PPR league, that matters for your running backs. You want them to be catching balls as well. And he's only been targeted 13 times compared to a lot of running backs that have been targeted 25 to 35 times already through this 5 weeks. So they don't use him a whole lot in the passing game. He's up against a tough run defense. This is just not the week that I see him going off, unfortunately. So if you have someone better to play or there's someone on that waiver wire, go get them. So let's keep the show moving on. We had a fun day in Bears land because we won. So we had some fun over at Tin Horn. We also had fun later in the day hanging out with some Broncos fans. They were excited because they beat the Raiders. So it was a Sunday fun day, and we have some footage to share for you all. Hi, Jenilee here from Big Balls Fantasy Football, and we're here at Tin Horn, the Bears bar in Burbank, and the Bears are down 17-3 at halftime against the Kansas City Chiefs. So unfortunately, it is not a very happy bar this week, and we are here with our good friend Shell. He also plays in our show league, fantasy-wise. But first, what do you think the Bears haven't done well in this first half, except for the fact that Jay Cutler fumbled and that went for a touchdown?
Well, I would like to say, what have they done well? Really, going to a hostile Arrowhead, you know, what can you do? But we thought that at least they would compete in this game, and it hasn't really even been close. The defense has been better, you know, in the first couple series, but they've been on the field the whole first half. They've been really tired, I think, now. And the offense, there's no receivers, you know. Cutler has nobody to throw to. He has Forte, but once you realize that all you have, your opponent only has one player, you can game plan for that. So the Chiefs have done a good job. Their defense is good. They've taken away Forte the last couple drives. Bears have, they can't move the ball. Their defense is struggling.
Absolutely. And one thing that I'm noticing is we only have 1 sack in the first half against a team that has, the Kansas City Chiefs, actually Alex Smith has been sacked 19 times in the first 4 games. So we're not getting that pressure on. The defense haven't given up any big plays. There hasn't been a breakdown in coverage. But they're just, the Chiefs are just marching down the field little by little, and then eventually either getting in field goal range or scoring. The Bears as well, in my opinion, on offense, you know, their offensive line is injured. We just have so many injuries. So let's move it on to fantasy. What's going on in your fantasy world?
Oh my God, there's so many players this week. I'm in love with. I picked up Tavon Austin on the waiver wire. I've been loving that. He got a touchdown earlier today. Who else did I pick up? The Packers defense this week. They've been doing good. Although how crazy is it? Aaron Rodgers has 2 picks already
at home in Lambeau Field. Yes.
So maybe I should have picked up the Rams defense. A little hindsight there. How's your fantasy team?
My fantasy team is doing really good. Doug Martin, Dougie, this is his 2nd week in a row. He has 2 touchdowns already, so he's balling out. Jameis Winston has not thrown a pick. I had to pick him up and play him, and he's been playing okay. He passed for a touchdown, so it's not been bad. And we actually had a question on our Facebook about who to start, and I suggested Tavon Austin. So if you're watching out there and you started him, you already got a touchdown.
Congrats.
Thank you for joining us, Shell, and we'll see if the Bears can pick it up after or in the second half.
All I do is win, 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 no matter what. Got money on my mind, I can never get enough. And every time I step up in the building, everybody hands go up.
Go Bears!
Bears win! Big Ball Fantasy Football, here we are here with the Broncos who are celebrating a victory.
Broncos!
What's the score? Give me the score.
16-10, we beat those wretched Oakland Raiders. God damn it.
Damn right. So you and I were talking, though, and we talk fantasy on our show. And so you were telling me, as opposed to me, you like your coach's philosophy with your team.
Gary Kubiak, baby.
Tell me why you like your coach's philosophy.
He's a great offensive coordinator. He won 2 Super Bowls with us and with San Francisco.
But as far as point scoring, I mean, you guys have been a little low.
You know, we've been making some mistakes. We've been shooting ourselves in the foot. It's not that we're not moving the ball. We just seem to stall out on drives. That Peyton Manning interception in the end zone, Charles Woodson, that really killed us. That should have touchdown for 6 points right there.
Yeah.
A couple other drives, you know, we just seem to stop. We'll start off really good, and we'll cough it up somehow. But that's okay, you know why? Because we got the Orange Crush defense in the league right now.
Your defense really is insane in fantasy. You guys are scoring like crazy. I mean, you must be really happy about that.
Makes me happy as a Broncos fan, yes. I don't play fantasy, but if I did, I would pick up that defense. Whoever has that defense is sure to have a hell of a season. I guarantee that much.
So let's finish it up here. Peyton Manning. Is this his last year? What do you think?
I think he's got one more in him, but this could very well and will probably be his last season. But
why do you think that?
I mean, honestly, his arm strength is still there. He's still got the quarterback mind.
Yeah.
He can still shred defenses apart when he needs to. As long as he stays healthy, I can see him coming back for another year. But if he ends the year like he did last year with, you know, a torn quad or something really bad happens, then I can see him retiring at the end of the season. But let's not hope that happens because we're open and we're going to be hoisting that Lombardi trophy in February for Peyton's last game at the Bronco. And that is how you go out on top as a champion.
That's Johnny.
That's Greg.
Biggest goddamn Denver fan here at the Outpost.
That's right, baby, Broncos!
Broncos.